Awesome. Welcome to another episode of A Podcast. Your host, Stephen Maxted, and today we have Rex Masesar, insurance and investment advisor, joining us today. Rex, I guess we go back a few years from when I was working a little bit in real estate, so we have some history here. We keep bumping each other at events, and we got chatting a little bit more about things that you're helping folks out with. I thought it was important to have you on the podcast and to chat about what's going on in the insurance and the investment side. It's something I'm personally passionate about, so this will be a fun conversation today. And just getting people the products that they ultimately need, and just education in that space. I know we were talking a bit about financial literacy in general, and how a lot of your conversations do go with individuals and business owners. Anyways, I'm excited to have you on. Thank you for making time out of your day to record a podcast episode with me here, Rex. And I'll hand it over to you to chat a little bit more about yourself and what you're up to.
All right. Thanks, Steve. And thanks for having me on. I'm looking forward to the questions and sharing more about what I do. But the best way that I like to explain what it is I do is my tagline is I help people protect and build their legacy. Everyone is building something that they're going to leave behind for their family, for their community, for their loved ones. And I'm there to help them protect it. I'm there to help them build it, because when it comes to financial literacy, like you said, it's a very important subject for me growing up. And like many of my clients and many people in general, I find that most people don't have a good handle on money. And it's not just how to make money and how to spend money, but how to manage it. And there's a relationship that they have that can go a number of ways, right? It's always top of mind for many people. And the ultimate question is, am I going to be okay? Am I going to be able to pay the bills? Am I going to be able to support my family? Am I going to be able to support my business? So there's a lot of those questions and all the subsequent kind of feelings and emotions going there. And like I was saying, I feel like a therapist most of the time.
Right.
Where I feel like, okay, I want to show you that it's okay. Here's a plan. Here's what I do with my clients. Here's the onboarding process. And by the end of the conversation, sometimes they're going to become clients right then and there, or maybe later down the line. But I want to make sure that they all get a sense of reassurance because,
Right.
Hey, who's not worried about money? Who's not worried about something happening to them, right?
Absolutely. I think it's one of the top stresses or potential stresses that folks are involved in. And, there was even actually a client of ours on the marketing side, but we were having a discussion this week about they had to put through a pretty substantial insurance claim for a break-in, a theft on their business. And, without that coverage, on that side of things, it'd be a pretty substantial loss for them. A vehicle was involved and stuff like that. And it's a good that they have had, a plan in place. I mean, some of it's forced through MPI, their coverage there anyways, but then, with like some building damage and other stuff, like you can see how, on the business, small and medium sized business or large, without the right coverage, you could find yourself in a real pickle pretty quick in terms of having that security blanket, as it were, to kind of help cover yourself in those unforeseen circumstances. And that's just one that's super top of mind. And then I know for folks talking about like investing nowadays, it's, there's lots of fluff out there, but actually like getting in the I guess like in the decision-making phase of like, hey, like what am I going to do this year or next year? What's the 5 or 10-year plan for this trajectory of, the time and energy I'm putting in. And like you said, helping folks kind of see that path. There. What's one of the biggest gaps that you see in financial literacy and education where folks need kind of like a reminder of, hey, like this is actually how this works, and you're kind of almost surprised by some of the questions, and it's in a healthy way, right? I'm saying this out of a nice way that people do genuinely want to know more, but maybe there is like an obvious gap that you see sometimes, or like a difference in understanding, right? People see the headline, they can repeat it back to you, but they don't actually really know what that tool does or what the function of that might be.
I would say the biggest gap that I always run into is saving for retirement, saving in general, and having a good sense of their life insurance needs, whether it's through their work or through their personal ones. So those would be the top 3 ones. The number one is just saving for retirement is, everyone's working hard, but how many people want to work for the rest of their lives? So I sit down with people and say, okay, where are you at? How much are you spending? What's your lifestyle right now? And how do we ensure that you can live that sort of lifestyle in retirement? And more often than not, they're not putting enough away. Or even worse is that the majority of them aren't even putting away anything at all. And that's
Interesting.
And that's a very tough one to really navigate and show them, okay, here's what you need to start doing. And it really starts with mindset, because a lot of people are living paycheck to paycheck. They're making sure their bills are paid because, like I said earlier, they just want to make sure that there's a roof overhead, food on the table, clothes in the back. Oh, who doesn't want to make sure that they have those daily things, right? But when it comes down to the increasing costs, emergencies that may come up, say, your furnace breaks, you get into a car accident or something like that, where is it going? So that's one very big gap, is that people just aren't putting money away. And that falls into the second one, is just making sure that they're having enough of an emergency savings. So because of all those things, so just putting money away. So those are the two ones, like saving for your future retirement. Like we were talking about, I remember you telling me about that video about the guy who said, get 2 million.
Yeah. What's that movie? I'll see if I can find it real quick here. I think if anyone's, and you work with me here as we're describing this, but what's the actor's name? I think Wahlberg's in the other seat in that one, but he's basically like, whatever, I guess we can spread it, but there's like, any asshole knows if you get 2.5 million, you get a 25-year roof and you put it in, a 5% return account, and that's your fortress. Anyone who's seen that clip probably knows what we're talking about there, but that's, and I guess baseline, when maybe the value is off a little bit now, because that was, I think the movie was, set back a few years, and that probably would have lasted, but they bring up like a good point within there, and maybe this is where you're going with this too, is like that acronym I wrote down for us to chat through today, the one that you had brought up to me, but it's around having that freedom in a way that is a little bit different than maybe how we used to look at things, because it was always, save up and, continue to be almost like from always save. And like, it's like, I think we're maybe lost that a little bit, but maybe it'll come back. Everything kind of does cycle in terms of like that dirty 30s style mentality of saving. I know like my gran was a notorious saver, like recycled, the original recycler. Like that milk carton got used about 5 times before it actually hit the recycling or garbage can style of energy, and just always shoveling away money into like savings and, creating these pretty substantial savings accounts back in the day, but being very incredibly frugal with money. And I guess what you're kind of commenting on too is that we're not really seeing a lot of folks save at all. It's about kind of paying those bills, paying those subscriptions, whatever it is. But yeah, sorry, segueing into, what was the acronym that we called the other day? I think it was FIRE, right?
FIRE. So
okay.
It's financially independent, retire early.
Okay. And this is, I mean, I think it's been talked about a little bit more, because even through general discussions that I've had with friends, they want to have more freedom than it is associated with this like giant, I mean, not that you can't have a good accumulation of wealth within doing this, probably lead to good things, but basically the idea, you explain it, Rex, you're going to do better than I am. Chat through this.
And I'm glad that you brought that up, because what I'm finding now is, so I'm in my young 40s, and I'm running into more and more people in their 20s and 30s who are subscribing to this type of method. So financially independent, retire early is people who are saving and investing very aggressively, whether they're high income earners or not, because they came from, and you saw it too, we saw our parents work their asses off. They worked a job or two. My mom was a working class immigrant. She worked 2 jobs just to make sure that my sister and I and our family had all the means to get as much as she possibly can, to make sure that we have the lives we have. And I know that, like, even with a lot of my clients, they have those type of parents. They also came, like our parents also came from, honestly, they came from better economic points, right? I
Right.
Have you ever read the book The Psychology of Money?
Yes, I have. It's
Right.
it's either on the shelf right here or in my other room. I do really enjoy that book. It's very gets you thinking for
it,
sure.
it, it gets you thinking because it my biggest takeaway from there was the how people treated money and credit, because when you take a look back at history going back to after World War II, so the 50s to the 70s and whatnot, it was at a time where interest rates were low. The ability to buy a home, the ability to get a job, and the ability to raise a family back then was easier as it was compared to now. And of course, there was different socioeconomic challenges that they had back then, like there was racism, there was
Right.
there was not a lot of options for people to move up and down the chain. But when it came to your average family who just wanted to get a job, get a car, get a home, it was easier. Now it's not that. Now it's not easier. So that's why, going back to this fire movement, that's why you see a lot of people subscribing to that, because they don't want to have to work their asses off for the next 30, 40 years. Who wants to? And we saw our parents go through that. So when I sit down with my clients, whether they're employed or if they're self-employed or starting or running their own business, I sit down with them and show them, okay, how do we get you to that? I called it work optional before the fire movement kind of really started picking up and made that acronym. It's work optional. Do you want to work or not? Okay. How soon can we get you to that point where do you have to show up to your 9 to 5 job? I want to make sure you're at a position where you have that option where you can go in, do what you need to do or not. Like who wouldn't want that, right? So
Now, Rex, can we break that down a little bit more? When you're saying that it's not just like, so number one, from the way that I'm hearing is you have your bills paid off, so to say. Like you're not probably carrying a lot of debt, if any, within that suggestion of the fire kind of movement. And then you have enough savings where you have some investments that are producing for you, in the sense of like you still have money growing for you. It's not just like, hey, like I don't have to work, but you have the option where you don't have to work. That's ultimately what we're saying here, right?
that's ultimately it. So
Yeah.
it's kind of looking at some of the statistics for the fire movement. I start to look at the percentage of people who actually are able to do it like fully. I mean like not work at all. And it's anywhere between 4 to 6%, anywhere between the ages of 35 to 55. It goes a little bit higher towards that end, and it shows just how challenging it is for people to do that aggressively. But on that same note too, they're starting to see a lot of people retire earlier because back in 2016, just from what I was reading in some of the reports, was that the average age of Canadians retiring was anywhere between 64 to 67. But now they're starting to see people retiring in their earlier 60s. So like 61, 63, not much of a difference. But from just some of the feedback that I see from reports, reading, even talking to some of my friends who have their parents retiring, they're doing that because they're dipping into their savings. They want to have that more freedom, because we also, even though it's harder for people to get started in life, there's also a lot more opportunity in life for people to travel, like the ability to travel and go to Disneyland with your family, to go to Europe. It's a lot more affordable now than it was even 10 years ago. And people see that. They want to enjoy their life because they've worked for 30 years of their life. So they want to start enjoying the fruits of their labor. And that's one of the most reassuring feelings I get when I sit down with clients, especially if they're working, they have 2, 3 kids, they've been working for 10, 15 years. They're just like, oh, Rex, I've been working my whole life. When do I get to see the fruits of my labor? And I get to remind them that this is what you can do now. You can take them to Disneyland. You can take that trip with your wife. You can do all those things. And I kind of describe it to just a sort of, it's a mindset. It really is a mindset, Steve, because being here in Winnipeg, we're coming off of a cold snap, and a lot of people aren't going out. your energy levels are low, you're not getting a lot of sunlight, it's just freezing cold. And I'm sitting down with a lot of
Yeah.
my clients, talking to them, and there's a general sense that I've been having. So I've been licensed since 2009, and I find that the conversations I have around this time, they're usually pretty low. They're down and out. They're just like, oh my God, I
Interesting.
can't do anything. They just spent a lot of money over the Christmas holidays. They're
Right.
replenishing it. They're paying off their credit card bills, which usually double just because they're buying gifts for their kids, their families. And I get to
Right.
show them, we planned for this. We know that it's happening, but who likes to see more money going out, right? But
Right.
the reassuring feeling I get is saying, hey, we knew this was going to happen. We know that you still want to retire in your 50s, 60s or whatnot. You still want to be able to go travel with your families. You can still do that. And kind of going back to that whole thing about in Winnipeg, it gets very cold.
Yeah.
It sucks. I mean, even just being able to go out and have take your family out for a dinner or something. A lot of people don't want to get bundled up. They're getting sick. I just got over a cold. I know you did too. So
Yeah. I know.
and
Suffering
right
from the
now,
man colds.
yeah, and a lot of people are
Yeah.
going through that, right? And
Yeah.
it's it's just a lot for people to take on. And going back to the whole therapist thing is like, I can sit
Mhm.
down, like I said, the client meetings that I had today was just like, I'm worried about this, I'm worried about that. It's like, well, I know we want to talk about your finances. For the
Right.
first 5-10 minutes, it was just like, not even 10 minutes. It's like, here's your plan, here's how it's growing, here's how we project it to go. And then the rest of the time we were talking about like life,
Yeah.
how things are going. And I'm like, I enjoy those conversations because for 5% of the time I'm speaking with them, it's the actual meat and potatoes of what I do. But
Right.
the rest
Rest
I'm
of the time.
but the rest of the time I'm bonding with them and reassuring them and talking about life, just because if I could share with you every single story that I have, like there's been hard stories of so we're talking about insurance of life insurance where I
Mhm.
have to walk them through the process of doing a life insurance claim where a loved one passed away, or or a critical illness came where they had cancer or whatnot.
Yeah.
But I get to also see the benefits of saying, here's the plan we put in place and here's what we're taking care of for you now. So
Mhm.
it's and that really branched off from my own personal experience, like when my father passed away, and
Right.
seeing how my mom had to navigate through dealing with the estate. I was 21 years old when my father passed away. And that's something I didn't, I don't think I shared with you yet, but one of the
No.
biggest motivators why I got into life insurance, because I'll never forget seeing. So I'll start from the beginning. I was
Yeah. Yeah.
21 years old. I came home. I was just, young, partying. Came home late, and I came home to find my father dead. And
Shoot.
I mean, you could only imagine what that's like, right? So it. And just before I go into the story, Steve,
Yeah.
you, the listeners, if you have your parents both walking this earth still, spend time with them. Tell them you love them, tell you care about them. I hope you have a relationship with them, because the time you have
Yeah.
with them is very short. Like I recently became a father, and I understand. Like I understand what a parent goes through and how much you want to be able to provide for them. So,
Mhm.
seeing everything that my mom and dad put in place to make sure we're taken care of, it's I get it, and you just want to be able to experience as much of that in life, because we can talk about money, we can talk about all the stresses in life, we can talk about you know anything from Trump to politics to religion, but the things that really matter in life are the fulfilling moments you have with your family, your loved ones, the peace of mind. Like I'm
Yeah.
turning 44 this year, and having been in this industry since 2009, I know what really matters for my clients, especially when I've seen them and myself deal with the passing of a loved one. So, uh, so going back to like what happened with my father, I came home, found him passed away, and seeing my mom navigate what it's like to deal with the estate, the home, finances. I just remember watching her and feeling helpless because I'm 21 years old. Like, what the hell am I doing? You know, my 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 mom was working 2 jobs. I just started school. My sister moved to BC to start her career. We don't really have much money, right? So, and I remember sitting down at the funeral home and we were discussing the final arrangements for my father and just how much a funeral costs. And I like the average funeral will cost anywhere from $15,000 to $20,000 or more. And this was in 2002. So just to bury my father and make sure that he's in his final resting place, you know, just to make sure he's in a decent place, it was going to cost us 25 grand. That's what we wanted for our father. And I was just like, holy crap, how the hell are we going to pay for this? Yeah. And my mom told me anak. So anak in Tagalog, Filipino language, is my child. She's anak. We have life insurance. So she explains it to me because I'm just like, okay, what's life insurance do? I had no idea. Right. And she said, this is how it pays out. This is how much it's going to pay out. This is what it's going to do for us. It's going to help us pay this bills. I'm like, holy shit. Part of my language. I'm like, thank God, because they had the foresight to make sure that we were taken care of. And I immediately remember saying, I'm going to buy life insurance myself because I want my future family. I don't want them to feel that moment of helplessness of what the hell are we going to do? And that's what really motivates me to promote life insurance, because it's coming. For those of the people who know it or not, it's coming. And I've seen the other side. Yeah. So, interrupt me if you have any questions or.
No, this is great, Rex. No, thanks for sharing, by the way.
Yeah.
You know that about your dad. Just know that you're very passionate about it. It's always been the energy I got from you. Now I know the why behind it, and that's fantastic. And
that's one reason why I became an automatic believer in saying, holy smokes, I got to make sure everyone has this, because I've seen the other side of people who don't have enough finances, who don't have enough insurance. So the second experience that I had that is one of my biggest motivators was I reached out to a financial advisor, and he was working with a big firm. I didn't really know him. I knew him through like a friend of a friend of a friend of a friend. So I had no idea what I was looking for. I was living with my mom. I was working, and I told him, I'm like, okay, I got $200 a month to spend. What should I buy? And he said, buy this universal life policy, and it'll take care of you for the rest of life. So universal life policy is a permanent policy. Okay. And me having no clue about finances, no clue about planning, nothing, right? I'm still 21 years old. Right. I said, okay, I trust you. You work with a big firm. You know what you're doing. I just trust you. So I signed up for it. But I also told him, like, well, I want to, save up for my future. I want to save up for retirement, all these other things. Is putting my whole budget towards this going to make the most sense? And he said, yeah, you're going to be fine. And I'm like, okay, fine. Fast forward 2 years later, when I move out of my own home, I want to start becoming a man, living on my own. I'm looking at my finances and I'm like, how the hell am I supposed to afford all this? And going back to that lifestyle, predicament about how living paycheck to paycheck, I was just like, how am I supposed to make this work and mature? And I would speak to other friends back then and speak to other advisors, and I would show them, okay, this is what I have. I'm like, and I'll never forget the feeling of speaking to another advisor. And he was telling me that, okay, why did this advisor tell you to buy this permanent policy? It's like, all you really needed was a term policy, which would have been less than half the price at that age. Right. So there's temporary insurance. The temporary insurance is you can get more insurance for a cheaper price. You can also lock it in and then convert it to a permanent policy in the future. And it positions people to get permanent life insurance later on if you have it. So I could have bought a term insurance policy and invested the rest and saved the rest. And that was the second experience that I had, where I'm just like, okay, why did this advisor sell me that policy? And having been in the industry for so long, I know what the commissions were like. So this guy made at least $3,000 off of me. And
Hmm.
I understand where the dollar signs come in, and I'm just like,
Right.
okay, why didn't this person listen to my needs and my goals and position me for something? So that was the second experience that I had that also motivates me as a financial advisor. I sit down with people and find out, what are your actual needs? What are your actual goals? Because if I were to sit down with my past self, I would have told myself, get a term insurance policy. You can convert it later, put that money into your savings, into your retirement, and do that. So I walked away from that experience saying, okay, if these are the type of advisors that are running around telling people get into these expensive policies,
Right.
holy, oh God, I get so mad because I see it happening still to this day, where there's these half-ass advisors giving this half-ass advice, this with dollar signs in their eyes. And I and
Right.
I I get it. They want to feed their family, they want to take care of themselves, but you gotta take care of your clients. You're not selling them like an expensive suit or an expensive car. Even then, if it's going to be something that's going to be taking money away from the essentials, roof over your
Right.
head, clothes on your back, why are you selling that? And it's not something you can return, right?
Hmm.
So I walked away from there saying, okay, if these are the type of people around there, I need to get into it. So I got it. I got involved. I got my license. I went to financial services, and getting into it, I I started working for group insurance. So group insurance is health and dental and whatnot. So this was
Right.
my it was about my second year in, and I got into the account management side, where I was helping small to medium sized companies across Canada get better group benefits. Blah 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 blah. I got into the service side,
Yeah.
and I remember having to deal with a death benefit claim,
Okay.
and it was $10,000. It was for a grocery store owner here in Winnipeg at the time, and it was a $10,000 payout. And I remember thinking to myself, okay, that should be enough to help, because my dad had a $25,000 policy. It was enough to pay for his
Pretty much.
burial. It
Yeah.
would have been nice to have more, but at least we didn't have to worry about it. So in the back of my head, I'm like,
Right.
okay, $10,000. Maybe these clients, they have more insurance elsewhere. Maybe they have a grocery store. Maybe they have assets or whatnot. So I
Yeah.
remember doing the claim, processing it, going there to deliver the $10,000 check, and asking the widow, okay, do you have any other life insurance that I can help you with? And they're like, no, this is it. And I'm like,
Mm.
okay. And I remember sitting, like being at the front desk and seeing her sitting down and thinking to myself, I look around the grocery store, there's a small deli in the back, and I'm thinking, okay, this $10,000 is probably going to pay for rent for the next 2, 3 months, not to mention the inventory that they have to keep this grocery store going.
Right.
And then I met the two daughters, and they were just about getting ready to go to university, and they both want to be doctors. And I'm like, holy smokes, this $10,000 is not going to go far enough.
Yeah.
And unfortunately enough, and this goes back to my original story of seeing the other side,
Yeah.
it wasn't enough. Years later, I remember driving, I would drive by that grocery store, and after about 2 years, they shut down. So I
Hmm.
don't know if they had to liquidate. I don't know what happened. Because I was there offering help as much as I can,
Right.
but there's only so much you can do when you got bills coming and kids going to school. So I don't know whatever happened to them. And that was the final motivator for me to go independent and start sitting down with clients and do all those things. So I worked for a
Right.
whole bunch of other bigger companies before fully going independent in 2020. But I've gone full time into it in October. So that's where I'm all in now. And
Interesting.
you were telling me the story of about how you got in, started calling all your friends for marketing and whatnot. And that's what I'm doing. I'm just on the phone saying, can I be of service? Can I do this? Can I help you with that? And whatnot.
Yeah.
And let me know, because I want to make sure, number one, that people avoid that upcoming problem, right? I want to make sure that they never have to feel that moment of helplessness if something happened to their loved
Right.
ones or for their families. And I definitely want to make sure they're getting the right advice, because for financial advisors, it's disappointing to see where the bar is set, and the type of support that's given to financial advisors, because it's a tough industry. Not a lot of people want to talk about their money. Not a lot of people want to talk about a very morbid subject, but it's a very important one. It's
Right.
And number three, there's so many people, not just Canadians, all over the world, even in the States, who are just there. There's going to be challenges, and how can people like me get out there and help as many people as possible? And going back to the financial literacy thing, like I met with two friends yesterday, and we're starting to create a group. It's going to be separate from the business that I do, but it kind of leads into it, where we just want to talk to people about financial literacy and how to build wealth, because it's not talked about at school. It's not a very big subject. Everyone wants to know how to make money, but
Right.
it's also about your relationship with money and how to plan it out and make sure that you're making the right decisions. It's boring ass stuff. It's
Yeah.
But at the same time, it's important. And the people that I'm gathering in the community are people who are living that fire movement. So I'm pulling them and saying, hey, can you talk to people like Steve? Can you talk to people here? And can you talk to some of my clients? Because I want them to
Yeah.
see that I can sit down and say, here's your plan, here's how it's going, and show them on a piece of paper that everything's okay. But
Right.
to get them out of that mindset, because then they're going back to their 9 to 5 job. They have to warm up their car for 20 minutes. Hopefully it starts. And it's just, it the world will eat away at you with all these things, and
Yeah.
staying resilient, especially in a place like Winnipeg, it's tough. But I want to show them, okay, here's some of the people who are living the life that you live, because I can show you on paper that everything's okay. Keep doing what you're doing. If you want to travel more, if you want to do this, if you want to leave your job and do all those things, here's the plan. But it's hard for people to mentally take themselves out of that and put them there,
Yeah.
let alone make the jump. But this community that we're forming is okay. Here's a guy named Mark. Here's a guy named Jay. Here's what they're doing, and here's how they did it. And it took a lot of hard work, but it's possible for you to live the life that you want to live, for you, your family, and your community. And these are all the motivators that I have, Steve, because I
100%.
want
Yeah.
I want to show people that it's as hard as it is, it's worth it.
Well, I think it's like sorry to jump, but it's definitely one of those things you'd rather have the hard conversation on the front end, so to say. Is it as uncomfortable as it may be? I mean, I personally don't feel super uncomfy chatting about it. Numbers are numbers. I don't know. At the end of the day, some of my best friends know that yeah, if we can talk about fitness and finances, we're pretty close.
Good.
We speak very openly about those things. It's, health and wealth, and just, being able to chat with friends if you feel comfortable doing it. But like, we often talk about like different things like mortgage rates, life insurance, different jobs, bonuses, what you're doing with your investments, in terms of like, yeah, stocks and different things, what's had success, what hasn't. There was this weird story. I'm gonna take a right here, but there's I don't know where I read this. We'll just say online, probably on social media somewhere. Realistically, there was a guy during, I guess it was like the Great Depression, in this town or city, whatever it was, in Florida somewhere, where there was some kind of Coca-Cola processing, and he convinced a bunch of people to buy like $19 stocks or something. I don't know if you've heard the story, but this whole town, city, whatever it was, became one of the wealthiest per capita cities or towns in the States because this guy convinced people to buy stocks. I'm not saying Coca-Cola is perfect or anything like that, but given different opportunities within your investment portfolio, whatever that may look like, not a professional advice, anything like that, but they were able to add a substantial amount of wealth from basically putting away money, whatever version of savings you want to put that into, whether it be like a GIC stocks, whatever. There is a benefit long term. It was the highest per capita of millionaires in any city or town, whatever it was at the time. It was kind of a neat story to hear because this person obviously there was a lot of things that went right to make that happen. There's equal chance of failure in many of those situations. Obviously we see, Coca-Cola is a success today, but no one knew back then, much like other opportunities to invest in things nowadays. There's a risk associated with it. But in terms of, like you said there, about a pattern of putting away money over, sorry, Mike, is really the mindset shift there. And I think one of the things to keep in mind is, I just looked at some stats here. If you saw my eyes squirting away here, I looked up what percent of people retire early, and this is considered early. And keep in mind, this is across the America. You might have known this too, but between 2016 and 2020, only 11% of Americans, pardon this one, but retired between the ages of 55 and 59.4. This was a decrease from the prior pay period where 15% retired between 55 and 59.5. While it's definitely possible to retire by the age of 55, it's not the norm. The average age of retirement, in this case in the US, but again, it's a bigger stat point, was 62 in 2023. So most people aren't retiring until then. We can definitely see why that would be the case. Most people are paying like a mortgage, or they've different life scenarios where maybe they didn't have coverage and considered different investment opportunities along the way. But there's definitely a choice to be made ultimately, and I think the more that people do take on the responsibility themselves of making those choices or investments, you can retire probably earlier than that. I don't know exactly what age bracket the FIRE movement would be targeting necessarily in terms of how young that would want to go. But yeah, it's an interesting stat to just like see here. I don't know what you see for your end of numbers in terms of percent of people that retire, but within those age brackets. But even that seems pretty far and stretched out to me. Personally, I'd be like disappointed if that's how things ended up, but say, Livy, let's, it may happen that way. And it also had some numbers in here too, as I'm, referencing this, but I think it said on the average Canadian, or how much the average Canadian is, depends on lifestyle, obviously, and savings, but they'll need between 700K and $1 million, which I think is pretty light in terms of retirement to be able to do that. But even that takes a number of years to compound and probably get to where you want to be between other plans there. But, if it's thought out ahead of time, the numbers certainly don't lie in terms of time in the market out. What's that saying, right? Time in market outpaces what's the, you probably know this, I don't know.
So time in the market is more important than timing the market. Right. Because you talk about if the earlier that you start saving for retirement or the saving to invest, the better, because you start to take advantage of the time horizon. So that's the time in the market. Whereas people who are trying to time the market, because it's going like this, right? And for the people who are trying to time it when it's low and then goes back up and then low and back up, that's a very hard thing to prepare for, at the very least predict, because no one has a crystal ball. And if someone is telling you that they know what they're doing, well, they are probably lying, or they have insider information, which is just illegal. So it's a very slippery slope when people try to time the market. But like going back to that story of that person who in that town where they said invest in stock. It's like it's stock in Coca-Cola. I mean, it's great that they had the foresight to say, do this. And there's another saying that goes that the best time to plant a tree was 10 years ago. The next best time is now. Right. So that's a conversation I have with my clients too. Is just like, oh, Rex, it's too late for me to start saving for retirement, start saving. And I'm like, it's late if you don't do anything about it now, especially if you know about it. And it's once again, it's that mindset. It's like, just start in saving to invest, and not just saving to save, but save to invest, because your future self is going to thank you. If there's something that, if you can look into the future and talk to 60-year-old Steve, what would you want to be able to say to that person and say, thank you, I'm glad you did that? And it's the saving to put away. And once again, it's a boring thing. And we live in a world of instant gratification where people want that now. You can order food and get it skipped to your house right away. You can go on, you can go on Instagram, you can go on any social media, get a happiness right away. That sense of delayed gratification, it helps. I know it. And I like the people I was talking to yesterday. So we're in our 40s, and we came from a time where we didn't have Facebook and all those things. So we were almost like we had to have like delayed gratification because we didn't have that. We had to go to the store and get a slice of pizza or order pizza or wait half an hour for a pizza delivery. But we only had a couple options of people who delivered back then.
Right.
And if we want to watch a show, we had to record it on our VCR because there's no TiVo, like there was no streaming. So, and I was talking to them about this, and we were talking about how are we going to get people to want to come to our community of people that want to teach financial literacy and building wealth. I'm like, I know if we just put a Facebook post or a post out there, people will come just because money is important. People want to learn more about finance. People want to learn how to build their wealth. And even though if it's something that can't happen now, that's the reality. You have to spend time in the market. And there's going to be people who want it right away and try and look through shortcuts or whatnot. And that's okay because they're going to learn. I learned. We learn through mistakes, and the more you fail, the quicker you learn how to succeed because you're going to find things that work and things that don't work. And I could sit down with people and say, here's what works. But a lot of my clients will do whatever they want with their money. I'll see them, I've seen people buy a new car. I've seen people upgrade their home or whatnot. And it's like, okay, we adjust because people want to live that life. And the prevailing response is that, well, Rex, if I die tomorrow, at least I get to enjoy it. I'm like, I can't argue with that. But what happens if you don't? What happens if you don't? Because we live in a time where health is like the technology in health is making us live longer. What happens if you outlive your money? What's going to happen? And I don't want it always to be doom and gloom. I want them to know that I'm here to support you. I'm going to be that voice on your shoulder to say, here's what we can do. Here's how we can adjust your finances. Here's how we could do. And make sure that you're still living the life you want so that you can enjoy that new home, that new car or whatnot with your family and yourself.
Absolutely. And sorry, Rex, I had to pull up some of the stats here. You see me looking over. I was curious to think, and I've thought about this, quite a bit because I think for a long time I fell in this category. Graduate from university, buy a house. Probably, smarter in terms of putting away money, but not always maybe the best avenue all the time. But I dumped a lot. I remember just sharing a known lived experience, but the first, I think, probably 2 months of buying this house, I'd been investing for a little bit. It helped me. Again, I was 23 years old, just out of university when I did that, which is seen as pretty young at the time. I think it probably is now seen as kind of extremely young. Totally self-funded. But I remember basically not sleeping for like 2 to 3 weeks after making that purchase because I had drained a majority of my savings and investments and stuff to make that happen. And I'm just like, I will never pay this off. Was the feeling there. And it was very, I think the expression is house poor in terms of having a good chunk of assets and finances tied up in the house. But I was just curious to see what on here, because for a bit it definitely was paycheck to paycheck. It was like, most of the money was going towards the mortgage, and I'm just sweating. Just started a career, finished university, and got into the grind there. But as of September 24 here, no, we're in Canadian stats from Google quickly here, but it says that 40% of Canadians live paycheck to paycheck. This percent is higher in Canadians 18 to 34 at 54%, and 35 to 54 at 57%. I'm guessing part of the reason that is higher due to other life expenses along the way, families, kids, offspring, that kind of stuff, probably goes up with age. Just guessing on some rough numbers there, but that's a pretty high percentage of folks. If we're looking at basically rounding up here, 60% of the population is, paycheck to paycheck. that's a pretty alarming rate, because something goes wrong at any point in there. And I guess to your point there too, there's that balance of, hey, I can't take it with me in terms of upgrading the vehicle or the house. But, how many of us are out there? What's another expression now? I don't want to get this wrong, but, keeping up with the Joneses kind of thing, where like you're chasing the what is what everyone else kind of has, instead of, and like to your point though too, like getting caught up in news and media stuff that way. I find that sometimes draining. I mean, we work in media quite a bit, but in terms of even this stuff, we can see, the reactionary stuff that happens even with shorts that we produce. Meanwhile, people do react to new stuff, but it probably doesn't affect their day-to-day really a whole lot at the end of the day, is kind of my takeaway. It's like, you don't look at your investments every day. Like you said, day trading, probably not a good strategy, pretty stressful, perhaps. Some people do it for a living, right? But that's their whole thing. But just kind of staying steady Eddie on a lot of stuff, I think is, partly the key. And just like Googling tips here, it's, create a budget, cut back on spending, increase your earnings, increase debt payments in terms of high debt. This is just, stop living paycheck to paycheck cycle, literally 101 here. And then the last stage is start investing. I think all these things could be done, I guess, in a way, right? Even to some small degree, but it's just more getting to that habit of doing it. Like you said, it's a mental state thing. And one of the biggest things I always compare it to is like the fitness side of things. I heard this guy, I feel like this was a social media thing that I saw as well, where a gentleman had just showed up to the gym for 5 minutes every day for like a month. His biggest thing was just like to show up he was a quite large man, in the story that I had heard been told, had to lose some weight. Doc basically told him whatever, like, you're going to die young if you maintain this weight, kind of thing. But he didn't really have the energy to do the workouts. But his biggest mindset shift had to be to just drive to the gym every day. He would sit there, have whatever it was. And then after that, he actually started going in and like working out. But his big shift over there was just like showing up, right? So whether it be, a $5 a day thing that you set up ahead of time, or whatever that equals per month, $150 a month to go to, investment side of things. So I think it just starts off with setting that up with someone like yourself to then start to make a big change, hopefully down the road. Oh, we've been talking too long. There's
a sensor in this office, so
no,
I
good.
gotta wave it down and make sure it knows I'm still alive.
Yeah, that's good. But it's kind of interesting to look at those stats and understand, like, it doesn't have to be that way. Like, we make choices every day that certainly impact that, but there's a lot of marketing out there to help keep people in debt, right?
Yes.
A lot of emotions that are made between purchasing, cars, I think a lot of the time, houses, whatever it may be, and other things that fulfill certain short-term moments of joy along with that. But just being regimented enough to have a plan could certainly change a lot of people's financial trajectory. Ultimately, that's not advice, again, by the way. That's just 101 of what the list has said here in terms of following some rules. But what would be one of the best ways to get started in, regardless of working with you, or what would be like next step? Someone's, listening to the episode today and wants to get in touch with yourself, Rex, and at least have the discussion or upcoming events, if there's anything that you have on your radar that way. What would you say to folks to get in touch or come and attend an event?
I would say reach out to me. I have a website, insuranceservices.ca. I also have my Instagram. It's Rex_Masesar. That's my personal one. And then I also have my business one, legacy.insurance.services on Instagram as well. So reach out. My Instagram has a link to my website, so you can schedule a time there on just to get to know me, or even do a review of your life insurance, and even talk about your financial planning. So just having the conversation, like just having a frank, honest conversation. You were talking about being able to talk to your close friends and family about that, and everything is in confidentiality. That's just with my compliance as well. And knowing and having shared with you my own personal motivations, I hope that really shows people that I'm coming from a place where I give a damn. Like it's a, it could be a cold ass world, Steve, and just finding people who care enough is hard. And I've seen, like I said, I've experienced it. I've experienced what it's like to be in financial strains. I've experienced what it's like to seek help and get bad advice. And I've seen clients who've been given not enough advice or bad advice, and see, okay, there's a need here. So that's where I'm coming from. And if anything, it's even if someone walks away and there's nothing I could do for them, at the very least, I want to help educate them, show them here's what to do. Start saving. Even if you're up to here in debt and you're living paycheck to paycheck, that whole analogy of this showing up to the gym, I tell people, okay, if all you could do is do $5 a paycheck, $10 a paycheck, it's
just that routine. That
routine. We're the sum of the choices we make in life, right? So it's the food we eat, it's the physical habits we make, it's what we put in our heads day in and day out, and that's what you become. So if you start to just put money away aside, whether it's just to save, just to pay down debt, just start. I remember that's what my mom taught me. She taught me how to save. She didn't tell me how to invest, and that helped me a lot, because I remember going through times when the economy was going down, and I was telling people, like, I'm still making money, and they're like, how are you still making money? I'm like, it's because I put money away. That's just what my mom taught me, and it started with $5 from delivering paper when I was 12 years old, and I took that with me growing up, and now I want to share that with people, and that's because that's what it takes. You were saying that statistic of people who are in their 40s to 60s, and you hit the nail on the head. They have kids, they upgrade their homes, they convince themselves that they need a bigger car, a nicer car, and that's what happens. So no,
I think this has been great, Rex. I'm excited to chat more at 2.0, so to say. Something else, I know that there's more to discuss here for sure. This has been great to make time to be on. We'll make sure to include all those links of how to get a hold of you in the underpart here, so if you're still listening, that'll be included below. And thanks for making time, Rex. This has been a great episode today.
Thanks for having me, Steve.
Awesome.